Hello. We are going to do chapter 11. It's called Doom of Innocence. When Eragon opened his eyes in the morning, he thought the sky had fallen. An unbroken plain of blue stretched over his head and slanted to the ground. Still half asleep, he reached out tentatively and felt a thin membrane under his fingers. It took him a long minute to realize what he was staring at. He bent his neck slightly and glared at the scaly haunch his head rested on. Slowly, he pushed his legs out from his feet to curl, scabs cracking. The pain had subsided some from yesterday, but he shrank from the thought of walking. Burning hunger reminded him of his missed meals. He summoned the energy to move and pounded weakly on Saphira's side. "Hey! Wake up!" he yelled. She stirred and lifted her wing to admit a torrent of sunshine. He squinted as the snow momentarily blinded him. Beside him, Saphira stretched like a cat and yawned, flashing rows of white teeth. When Eragon's eyes adjusted, he examined where they were. Imposing and unfamiliar mountains surrounded them, casting deep shadows on the clearing. Off to one side, he saw a trail cut through the snow and into the forest, where he could hear the muffled gurgling of a creek. Groaning, he stood and swayed, then stiffly hobbled to a tree. He grabbed one of its branches and threw his weight against it. It held, then broke with a loud crack. He ripped off the twigs, fit one end of the branch under his arm, and planted the other firmly in the ground. With the help of his improvised crutch, he limped to the iced-over creek. He broke through the hard shell and cupped the clear, bitter water. Sated, he returned to the clearing. As he emerged from the trees, he finally recognized the mountains and the lay of the land. This was where, amid deafening sound, Saphira's egg had first appeared. He sagged against a rough trunk. There could be no mistake, for now he saw the gray trees that had been stripped of their needles in the explosion. How did Saphira know where this was? She was still in the egg. My memories must have given her enough information to find it. He shook his head in slight astonishment. Saphira was waiting patiently for him. "Will you take me home?" he asked her. She cocked her head. "I know you don't want to, but you must. Both of us carry an obligation to Garrow. He has cared for me, and through me, you. Would you ignore that debt? What will be said of us in years to come if we don't return? That we hid like cowards while my uncle was in danger? I can hear it now, the story of the rider and his craven dragon. If there will be a fight, let's face it and not shy away. You are a dragon. Even a shade would run from you, yet you crouch in the mountains like a frightened rabbit." Eragon meant to anger her, and he succeeded. A growl rippled in her throat as her head jabbed within a few inches of his face. She bared her fangs and glared at him, smoke trailing from her nostrils. He hoped that he had not gone too far. Her thoughts reached him, red with anger. Blood will meet blood. I will fight. Our words, our fates, bind us, but try me not. I will take you because of debt owed, but into foolishness we fly. "Foolishness or not," he said into the air, "there is no choice. We must go." He ripped his shirt in half and stuffed a piece in each side of his pants. Gingerly, he hoisted himself onto Saphira and took a tight hold of her neck. "This time," he told her, "fly lower and faster. Time is of the essence." "Don't let go," she cautioned, then surged into the sky. They rose above the forest and leveled out immediately, barely staying above the branches. Eragon's stomach lurched. He was glad it was empty. "Faster, faster," he urged. She said nothing, but the beat of her wings increased. He screwed his eyes shut and haunched his shoulders. He had hoped that the extra padding of his shirt would protect him, but every movement sent pangs through his legs. Soon lines of hot blood trickled down his calves. Concern emanated from Saphira. She went even faster now, her wings straining. The land sped past, as if it were being pulled out from under them. Eragon imagined that, to someone on the ground, they were just a blur. By early afternoon, Palancar Valley lay before them. Clouds obscured his vision to the south. Carvajal was to the north. Saphira glided down while Eragon searched for the farm. When he spotted it, fear jolted him. A black plume with orange flames dancing at its base rose from the farm. "Saphira!" he pointed. "Get me down there! Now!" She locked her wings and tilted into a steep dive, hurtling groundward at a frightening rate. Then she altered her dive slightly, so they sped toward the forest. He yelled over the screaming air, "Land in the fields!" He held on tighter as they plummeted. Saphira waited until they were only 100 feet off the ground before driving her wings downward with several powerful strokes. She landed heavily, breaking his grip. He crashed to the ground, then staggered upright, gasping for breath. The house had been blasted apart. Timbers and boards that had been walls and roof were strewn across a wide area. The wood was pulverized as if a giant hammer had smashed it. Sooty shingles lay everywhere. A few twisted metal plates that were all that remained of the stove. The snow was perforated with smashed white crockery and chunks of bricks from the chimney. Thick, oily smoke billowed from the barn, which burned fiercely. The farm animals were gone, either killed or frightened away. "Uncle!" Eragon ran to the wreckage, hunting through the destroyed rooms for Garrow. There was no sign of him. "Uncle!" Eragon cried again. Saphira walked around the house and came to his side. Sorrow breeds here, she said. This wouldn't have happened if you hadn't run away with me. You would not be alive if we had stayed. Look at this, he screamed. We could have warned Garrow. It's your fault he didn't get away. He slammed his fist against a pole, splitting the skin on his knuckles. Blood dripped down his fingers as he stalked out of the house. He stumbled to the path that led to the road and bent down to examine the snow. Several tracks were before him, but his vision was blurry and he could barely see. Am I going blind? He wondered. With a shaking hand, he touched his cheeks and found them wet. A shadow fell on him as Saphira loomed overhead, sheltering him with her wings. Take comfort. All may not be lost. He looked up at her, searching for hope. Examine the trail. My eyes see only 2 sets of prints. Garrow could not have been taken from here. He focused on the trampled snow. The faint imprints of 2 pairs of leather boots headed toward the house. On top of those were traces of the same 2 sets of boots leaving, and whoever had made the departing tracks had been carrying the same weight as when they arrived. You're right. Garrow has to be here. He leapt to his feet and hurried back to the house. I will search around the buildings and in the forest, said Saphira. Eragon scrambled into the remains of the kitchen and frantically started digging through the pile of rubble. Pieces of debris that he could not have moved normally now seemed to shift on their own accord. A cupboard, mostly intact, stymied him for a second. Stymied? I don't know how to pronounce that. Then he heaved and sent it flying. As he pulled on a board, something rattled behind him. He spun around, ready for an attack. A hand extended from under a section of collapsed roof. It moved weakly, and he grasped it with a cry. Uncle, can you hear me? There was no response. Eragon tore at pieces of wood, heedless of the splinters that pierced his hands. He quickly exposed an arm and shoulder, but was barred by a heavy beam. He threw his shoulder at it and shoved with every fiber of his being, but it defied his efforts. Saphira! I need you! She came immediately. Wood cracked under her feet as she crawled over the ruined walls. Without a word, she nosed past him and set her side against the beam. Her claws sank into what was left of the floor, her muscles strained. With a grating sound, the beam lifted and Eragon rushed under it. Garrow lay on his stomach, his clothes mostly torn off. Eragon pulled him out of the rubble. As soon as they were clear, Saphira released the beam, leaving it to crash to the floor. Eragon dragged Garrow out of the destroyed house and eased him to the ground. Dismayed, he touched his uncle gently. His skin was gray, lifeless and dry, as if a fever had burned off any sweat. His lip was split, and there was a long scrape on his cheekbone, but that was not the worst. Deep, ragged burns covered most of his body. They were chalky white and oozed clear liquid. A cloying, sickening smell hung over him, the odor of rotting fruit. His breath came in short jerks, each one sounding like a death rattle. Murderers, hissed Saphira. Don't say that. He can still be saved. We have to get him to Gertrude. I can't carry him to Carvajal, though. Saphira presented an image of Garrow hanging under her while she flew. Can you lift both of us? I must. Eragon dug through the rubble until he found a board and leather thongs. He had Saphira pierce a hole with a claw at each of the board's corners, then he looped a piece of leather through each hole and tied them to her forelegs. After checking to make sure the knots were secure, he rolled Garrow onto the board and lashed him down. As he did, a scrap of black cloth fell from his uncle's hand. It matched the stranger's clothing. He angrily stuffed it in a pocket, mounted Saphira, and closed his eyes as his body settled into a steady throb of pain. Now! She leapt up, hind legs digging into the ground. Her wings clawed at the air as she slowly climbed. Tendons strained and popped as she battled gravity. For a long, painful second, nothing happened, but then she lunged forward powerfully and they rose higher. Once they were over the forest, Eragon told her, Follow the road. It'll give you enough room if you have to land. I might be seen. It doesn't matter anymore. She argued no further as she veered to the road and headed for Carvajal. Garrow swung wildly underneath them. Only the slender leather cords kept him from falling. The extra weight slowed Saphira. Before long, her head sagged and there was froth at her mouth. She struggled to continue, yet they were almost a league from Carvajal when she locked her wings and sank toward the road. Her hind feet touched with a shower of snow. Eragon tumbled off her, landing heavily on his side to avoid hurting his legs. He struggled to his feet and worked to untie the leather from Saphira's legs. Her thick panting filled the air. Find a safe place to rest, he said. I don't know how long I'll be gone, so you're going to have to take care of yourself for a while. I will wait, she said. He gritted his teeth and began to drag Garrow down the road. The first few steps sent an explosion of agony through him. I can't do this, he howled at the sky, then took a few more steps. His mouth locked into a snarl. He stared at the ground beneath his feet as he forced himself to hold a steady pace. It was a fight against his unruly body, a fight he refused to lose. The minutes crawled by at an excruciating rate. Each yard he covered seemed many times that. With desperation, he wondered if Carvajal still existed or if the strangers had burned it down too. After a time, through a haze of pain, he heard shouting and looked up. Brahm was running toward him, eyes large, hair awry, and one side of his head caked with dried blood. He waved his arms wildly before dropping his staff and grabbing Eragon's shoulders, saying something in a loud voice. Eragon blinked uncomprehendingly. Without warning, the ground rushed up to meet him. He tasted blood, then blacked out. And that is the end of that chapter, my loves.